Do we have any questions from the committee? Senator Canella and then Senator Leyva.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think this is a good bill, decent bill. My concern is, and it's what the utilities brought up, and I think it's what we see with some of the solar initiatives where folks get off the grid, so they don't pay the cost with associated with the transmission lines for the most part, and the folks that don't have solar now end up holding the bag. And what was told to me, and I saw it in the analysis, is that the utility companies are the carrier of last resort. So, and Mr. Shaw talked about energy prices are 74% higher than other states, and there's a reason for that. It's because we have mandates. We've required utility companies to do certain things. We have a very robust RPS program, so that costs money. And so if now folks are able to go out of that system and procure power at a lesser rate, there still are those fixed charges that myself will have to cover, and folks like me that don't have direct access. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the carrier of last resort. And if, let's say some of these utility companies say they're going to provide power and they cannot for whatever reason, then these folks that had direct access now will go back to the original carrier. And if they were required to pay the cost with jumping back into the system, the full cost, I think that would be equitable. If they can just slip right back in and say, well, it didn't work out, but now we're going to go back to how it was before, when the rest of us have been left carrying the load. So I'm just curious if there's a provision in the bill to have the folks who decided to opt out and go with direct access, if they hop back in, do they pay the full cost with going back in?
Yeah, let me address that initially. First of all, the underlying measure that occurred with the Kehoe bill some years ago, and it basically says in no uncertain circumstances that the full non-bypassable charges are required to be paid. The PUC employs a certain process of non-bypassable charges like power charge and difference adjustment, and here's a case that was filed at the PUC dated December 18, 2012, joint response by Southern California Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric, where they basically say that this power charge and difference adjustment actually works, that people aren't paying any extra money, and this has actually worked. And to the extent that there's an issue, I will make sure, as a sense of fairness in everything that I do, as long as I serve here, to make sure that's the case, because I think it's unfair for the utilities and for other customers to have to bear that cost. I think they're 100% correct. So the truth of the matter is that this cost shifting idea has been taken care of both in statute and at the PUC, and the parties themselves have said this is not a pleading, this is not a decision, this is their joint response in their document as to cost shifting. So that argument is often made. Look, these are difficult challenges. People are fighting for work and jobs and their piece of the market, right? Our job as legislators, in my judgment, is to figure out what the future looks like. This reminds me of like an argument with the Pony Express or the Telegraphs, who are trying to preserve their jobs, and legitimately so. I don't have a problem. We just have to figure out how to make that transition, make sure jobs are protected. This notion of jobs is really important, because what's really going on, because I was there for the whole time, is that the investor-owned utilities signed contracts with a lot of small companies who didn't have the financial wherewithal to do it. Their contracts were financed on the backs of the utilities' balance sheets. Now they're coming to an end. The list of these people here are jobs in California who are losing their contracts because those renewable jobs and that world's shifting. We have matured this process over time since Fran's bill way back when, the 20% RPS, and where it's going. And technology's matured, the banking community's matured, the finance community's matured, the insurance community, and we're working to a place. And the question is, how do we protect that work on the one hand, yet still address the other elements? And that's what we're trying to do in a balanced approach here. Okay.
Senator Leyva.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senator Hertzberg.
Good morning. Want to sing that?
No, I really don't want to sing,
okay.
Nor does anyone want to hear me sing. I think we're in a very unique position here in California. I think that the landscape is changing, and I think we have an opportunity, as one of the previous speakers said, is to make California the state it once was in manufacturing. I think that's absolutely accurate. I have a couple concerns. One, I would like to address what Mr. Wetch said about the RECs. Would this bill allow companies to buy more RECs out of state?
Yeah, the answer is he just raised it with me for the first time this morning, okay? it was just indicated to me that those standards have already been set with respect to the RPS and what's required. I don't know, you know, the questions when we met were the two issues that I addressed in the bill, because I thought that Mr. Wedge was right. One is, we don't want the billing to be offshored, and let's make sure that the people who are doing the billing continue the billing. Fair call. Two, let's put a cap and let's go slow on this, because we want to make sure that we be appropriate on this. And the answer to the question is, yeah, I thought he was right, and so I added a cap. Because you know, but what we really have is, if you think about it, right? I mean, this whole thing about short-term contracts and financeability, he's 100% correct. But that's again, horse and buggy talk, because that was yesterday. It's all changing. I just articulated that Google and other companies all are going to long-term contracts. That's where they're going. The reason they were short-term contracts is because we were developing, and no one wanted to take long-term risks. Now there's a maturity in the market. There's a maturity in understanding. There's sustainability officers. There's people that really want long-term supplies. It makes sense. And so that's shifting, right? The only, the rec issue, I'm told it's not really relevant. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know that answer.
Yeah, please.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, just to clarify this discussion a little bit more so senators understand where to ask questions, you are accepting the proposed amendments of the committee?
Well, what I want to accept, what I want to do is I want to meet you halfway. I don't really, in terms of where you're at, you're proposing a cap of basically, from my understanding, adding 3%. What I want to do, and what I said in my opening, was I do agree with you, but I think that what you've done is you've been too restrictive. All you've done is you've said, okay, we're going to raise the cap to people who were on the list in 2012. I don't know if that's real. What I want to say is, give the customers 6 months to add on the waiting list and indicate the true size of the pent-up demand, and put a cap of 35,000 gigawatt hours, which is an 18% statewide load. So I'm moving it up a little bit, but I'm trying to create practical reality, because I don't know if it's real.
Now, generally, you're saying it's 3%, but when you do the math, we're going from 24,851 to 33,000.
Which is 6,100 gigawatt hours more, which is about 700 megawatts, and about 845 customers.
So
It adds about 3%.
That's about 6%.
No, that's about
5 or 6.
Where's the? My notes indicate, I didn't do the math personally, but it's about 3%. I initially wanted to double it from 25,000 and double it, and what I'm saying now is, to me, in order to get something that's commercially reasonable and make this really work versus something that works in committee, is to go to cap it at 18%, but it could be less. There's two factors. One is a 6-month time.
You're saying commercially viable, and I'm saying it's arbitrary. So, I mean, you need to convince the committee why that makes it commercially viable. We have you've argued that at the current rates, you have people that are benefiting from this policy.
Right.
Now, we're increasing it. We're not eliminating it.
That's right.
So increasing it would at least cover the, generally speaking, the people that we're calculating based on what their demands are. They've already said this is what'll work for us, and we're allowing them to come into the system. You're saying, well, let's increase it beyond that, and we don't necessarily know that there will be a demand for that. I like the waiting list concept, because while you say, well, the waiting list doesn't work because people don't know that it results in anything. Well, this is a show that it will result in something.
That's
by
right.
us acting to accommodate people that have been patient enough to.
This is like, but here's the issue.
Wait in a waiting list. So,
Mr. Chairman, here's the issue, I think. You had a list. It's like someone standing at the line at the DMV, and there's 600 people in line, and somebody drives by and they want to go, and you're trying to make a determination as to how many people need the DMV services. Well, when you see a line of 600 people, you say, forget about it. I'm not putting myself in the line, and you drive past the DMV and you go home and you have a beer, right? In this situation, we have a line of 845 customers of 6,100 gigawatt hours back in 2012. All I'm saying to you is let's do exactly what you say. Let's open it up, right? And let's not be crazy, because that would be problematic. Let's open it up and let's test whether those guys have left. Maybe they're out of business. Maybe they went off to Hawaii. Who knows what they are, if they're still real, because they're old waiting lists. Let's create a 6-month window. So there's 2 event horizons. One is time and one is gigawatt hours. And so the time horizon says we got 6 months to make a list, a new list. So people can drop off, people can add, we can see what that looks like. And then we have a cap. when you get to 35,000 gigawatt hours, or 18% of the statewide load, instead of 12.5%, you basically are at 15.5%, then you cap it. And if that happens sooner or later, that way you're really testing the market, who's real, who drove by the DMV line, and what that looks like. And that, to me, deals with what you're trying to challenge, test the list on what's real, versus saying, well, we have a 2012 list, let's just make that the number. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I thought it was kind of common sense.
So you want to do an additional 6,000?
That's right. That's right. Well, it's
Can't read that. That's
it's basically, it looks like it's an additional 3,900, basically. That's what I get to.
it'll be 2,900. No, I'm sorry, that's 1,900.
35, if you're 25,000 gigawatt hours under the Kehoe bill right now,
Well-
what you've proposed is to go to 31,100, and I want to go from 31,100 to 35,000 as a cap. It could be less,
So you want to go to 10,000?
additional over current
Additional.
law. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have, okay, well, that seems like a lot to me, given what the waiting list is, and you complicated the matter by adding the DMV analogy, because we can argue why that doesn't,
I'm just using that, trying to tell the story. You got a line, that's all.
but we don't know that, it's.
You know that you currently have a line that's 6,100 gigawatt
Right.
hours. That exists.
Yeah.
That waiting list exists.
That's all that we know. We
That's
can
all we know.
speculate everything else.
That's right.
Right. So I'm going to go back to Senator Leyva, and then Senator Morrell, and then Senator Pavley.
Thank you,
And then
Mr.
Senator
Chair.
McGuire.
This is not common sense for me. I hate to differ, but I think this is new for a lot of us, and that's why I know I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions because this is policy that's going to change our state for better or for worse. So back to the RECs. I didn't get a good answer on that.
What, do you have the answer on that?
More, less,
You got it?
the same?
You got
Maybe the gentleman who brought it up.
So the answer is as follows. The RPS law is already in statute, and it
Correct.
says X amount from bucket 1, X amount from bucket 2, X amount from bucket 3. We're not changing that. The RECs are in bucket 3. We're not changing those percentages. So they have to utilize what current law allows them for. So when we take a look at the standard in Mr. Hertzberg's bill, right, that same standard will be applied there because it's in current law. We're not changing the RPS.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wedge?
Senator Scott Wetch, the 51%, the requirement in this bill that says that 51% of the new DAA transactions must be done with renewable energy sources is the shiny green trinket to get your attention. But the reality is the ESPs have already met their RPS requirements, and they've already exhausted, under their law, their maximum amount of RECs. So going forward, this entire 51% under this bill will be all RECs. There is absolutely no prohibition that they can't fulfill the requirements of this bill, the 51%, entirely with out-of-state RECs. There's no prohibition on that whatsoever.
If you need clarification, Scott, on that, our intent is that the same bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3 law applies so that you don't have this REC thing. It's just, that's not the intent. If you need clarification, happy to do that. That's not the purpose of the bill. Purpose is to make sure that what the RPS is what it is, and there's no change, and you can't just fill it up all with bucket 3. That's not what we're trying to do.
Because that is a concern, that we
Yeah,
would,
fair
that would be
call.
bought more from out of state.
Done.
Okay.
I don't wanna
Second-
do that.
My second question is about, we have a real opportunity to create good middle-class jobs here.
100%.
And union jobs are good middle-class jobs.
100%.
A number of the companies that are in support of the bill are non-union companies. How do we make sure that these are good wage jobs?
Well, first of all, the Safeway's a union house. There's a bunch of them.
I
and
know
most
who's
of the
union,
work-
who's not union.
What?
I know who's union and not
Yeah.
union.
I guess I forgot I'm talking to. Sorry about that.
She knows the answer to the questions before she answers. It's a lawyer thing.
It's pretty funny. Look, I'm all for you on this stuff on high-wage middle-class jobs. It is the middle class. It is those jobs that make the middle class, not the middle class that's made by other people's wealth. Completely agree with that stuff. I mean, in talking to Mr. Wetch, he says to me, and he's correct. He says, look, Google's not going to go out and Google hire their employees to do this stuff. They're going to hire us to do it. And a lot of these guys have been hired by them. I don't know, but I'm going to spend every ounce of my energy making sure that happens in every respect on construction and all the other things, whether it's Davis-Bacon and all the various other things that happen. And at the end of the day, we have a lot of leverage points to make that happen. So I'm with you on that. I'm completely with you. But there's two sides to the jobs here. You also have a lot of union jobs that are at risk for places that are going to go out of business because these RPS contracts are going out. This is not back in the Kehoe days. We're facing this stuff. There's these geothermal places and other places out there that people are working in union houses, and they're going to lose their jobs. You got both sides. Who loses their job? This is a way, in a modest way, with protections of the people so the billing is done. It doesn't go to residential, right? The rec problem is not a problem. I will do what I got to clarify. That is not what it is. Look, everybody makes up arguments to win their point and worry about what they are. We've all been through this a long time. Give me a break. The only issue that's really left that was raised to me with respect to the union folks is the top of the pole, the microgrid issue. And I didn't know about that until just now. There's a disagreement about that, and I'm going to figure out how to work with these guys on it, because that's not my objective. There's a way to work this out. It's not hard. It's just not hard. I took what I thought was appropriate, what they gave me, everything it was. I now learned other stuff. The rec issue, which brought up to me this morning for the first time, that's not the purpose. It's not the proper reading of the bill. If there's clarifying language is required, happy to take it. That's not what anybody wants to do here.
Okay, I just want us to be very thoughtful, very pragmatic,
100%.
because this is a big change going forward if this bill were to pass. So I'll be watching,
You, darling.
and I want to help if I can.
Thank you.
And you can call me Senator, not
McMorrow?
darling.
Yes,
Senator.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Hertzberg. Thank you. I'm willing to support the bill today, but there's a caveat. Want to see the language that's put into this.
Of course.
I hate to see anything shifted onto the ratepayers. That, and I think their Pony Express may be coming back, by the way.
Senator Pavley?
Yes, Senator Hertzberg, I think the difference in the numbers does matter, working with the chair. I don't know what you're going to do about that, but if Senator Hueso feels strongly about that, you're going to have to figure out how to reach a compromise through this committee process. And so I'll just throw out options. Leave it blank and come back with just that number, vote only on just that number next week, or something, but I let Mr. Hueso know I'm going to follow him on his gut feeling. He knows this issue cold as well as you do. So working out the differences of the chair is important on that. You articulated to Senator next door to me here that I think you articulated there was certainty for renewables. The gentleman that testified earlier, I think it was Mr. Friedman, talked about the need for long-term contracts that direct access doesn't have. If you're closed, you would hit that one again. I do think the rec issue, the in-state versus out-of-state jobs, is probably critical. And the final one I just want to put on your radar screen is at some point in time, whether it's in your close or if this bill or as this bill moves forward, how does this bill interact with the climate goals, specifically the governor's stated climate goals of the 50% renewables? That's important. Generally, we like to carry bills that get signed. Also, or Senate Pro Tem's SB 350, which I'm sure will be directly relevant discussion. So I'm not sure about the interaction between the climate change goals, and obviously you would know that I wouldn't want to do anything that would derail those goals.
Thank you. Senator McGuire?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the opportunity and do appreciate the senator bringing this forward. I think just a few items, and just on the issue of, and I know the senator is going to be working on this issue, but on the issue of RECs, I think that the concern is that ESPs, they can broker the power, and where they source it is going to be important. There is no doubt that this is going to be a bottom line savings to the end user, whether it's an Albertsons or another commercial entity. But I think the source of the power is going to be important. And that came up a lot, and this is one of Mr. Wetch's favorite subjects, and that's related to community choice aggregators in the state. And needing to be able to follow through with what the state's objectives are related to green energy, and not simply hiding behind a piece of paper that still buying coal, but buying the credits that will clean it up. So I think that is going to be an important one as this moves forward, related to longer-term contracts with renewables. And that also may impact price point, quite frankly, a bit. But as we've seen many times at the local level, municipals are still able to buy a greener portfolio and still deliver energy at a cheaper price. And I do think it's going to be important to be able to work with the chair. We'd be happy to be able to see this come back. But I think that's just the bottom line of the issue of RECs is also committing to some type of renewables so that we're actually purchasing here in state. But just some
I can answer.
Senator Fuller.
Well, I just think that the intent has some merit, and but I'm very interested in. I think your piece that I'm interested in is that the people get to pay their tail, so to speak, as they leave. But there's been a little controversy over whether they're paying the full tail or not. So I'd like to ask if it's okay with the chair for a turn to just give us their interpretation of if there's a cost shift to ratepayers if this direct access is increased, just shortly.
Thank you, Senator. Matt Friedman on behalf of TURN. Senator Hertzberg did point out that the power charge indifference adjustment, I believe that's the words that for the acronym PCIA, is designed to capture indifference amounts and to hold the utilities harmless. However, there is a great amount of dispute, and it's an ongoing battle over whether the methodology is adequate. In addition, electric service providers routinely intervene at the California PUC and oppose proposals for new generation costs to be allocated to direct access customers. This is like trench warfare over at the commission, and some might say the law is clear, but the direct access providers don't think it's that clear, and it only takes 1 or 2 or 6 bad decisions over at the commission to turn this completely around. So I'd say that the cost allocation issue is a work in progress, and nobody feels particularly satisfied. That includes us. But more fundamentally, I think the problem is that the electric service providers are buying different products in the market. They're simply buying short-term attributes, short-term power, short-term credits for resource adequacy. Meanwhile, the investor-owned utilities are getting new gas-fired generation built, fast-ramping generation, combined cycle and combustion turbines. They're out there investing in energy storage. They're doing all the heavy lifting that is actually costly and requires really long-term horizons. And we just don't see that type of behavior from the ESPs. Although Senator Hertzberg says maybe this is a new era we'd be entering into, we do have 20 years of experience here in California. It's not like this is a brand new idea, and the market has been relatively stable for the past decade. There have been a lot of customers who have been continuous direct access, and we just haven't seen that type of practice by the ESPs.
Can I just answer your question, Senator?
Sure.
No, look, of course it's trench warfare. If you look at the energy folks, they're all saying that they're overcharging and they're getting paid too much. The utilities say it's all fine. That's the way it is. The second thing is this notion that this utilities and the model hasn't changed. I met with the CEO of Edison. He only has 20%. When I was in government before, he had 100%. He owns 20% of what he produces. PG&E, 40% of what they produce. Where are they getting their stuff? They're engaged in long-term contracts. That and their RPS in order to meet the renewable portfolio standards. That's why we have a duck curve. That's why we're going to have an oversupply, because we have a whole reconstitution of how it works. And so how do you solve that problem in terms of that? What you're going to ultimately have to do is deal with this larger issue about whether there's charges for investor-owned utilities to have a baseline number, because they provide a very important element in society, that they have reliability. We're in a transition. But the part of this has happened is that we've also had this stuff going on since Kehoe's bill, whenever that was, 12 years ago, whenever we did that. I don't know how many years ago it was. And that's worked extremely well, and you have this incredible pent-up demand. This notion of RECs, to me, if there's any question, to me that's just, the last-minute stab at you to try to create some level of insecurity. The purpose and the meaning of renewable portfolio standard is 51%, consistent with the law. If we have to put a set of suspenders on that belt to make sure that no one can interpret it to mean RECs because you're adding it, happy to do that. But that's a stretch in order to throw a bomb in the deal. The truth of the matter is that we have the amount of growth is from 25,000 to whatever the new number is. It's a small number. And so far, what's proposed is what's been on a waiting list for 3 years.
So I guess for me is, I think the intent of the bill is good, and I think that there is a new market coming, and I do think we are going to have excess energy generation, and I do think that, the only way we can, do something about it at some point is basically have a flash boys market, so to speak.
What's that?
Well, in stock, that's the computer that's closest to the computer that's selling the stock, and if it gets there 5 minutes before, then they can sell it for 3 cents less and make a lot of money, and so all of the excess supply suddenly goes out because of the investors or the people who are reselling it, and that's basically what you're sort of trying to create. But I'm not sure that I'm completely convinced that the tail is going to be paid off. And I'm not sure that you can completely promise that because of the CPUC and others. So I lean toward supporting this bill today, but I want to make sure that, that if there's any credible evidence that comes forward that you're not totally paying the tail, or that you are in any way damaging the reliability of the utilities, that then I don't think you've kept your promise, which is solving the problems for a new era. And I lean a little bit toward the chair's amendments, because if you slow it down a little bit, it's more likely to not have damage if you're not able to do that. But overall, this is a very big leap, and I appreciate your thoughtful initial design.
Thank you.
Okay, I think generally in hearing the testimony, I want to work with you. I support the concept generally. I'm concerned that increasing can potentially expose some conditions that are not as visible when procurement is at a low level. And I'm not interested in supporting a situation that'll lead to either ratepayer subsidies for other people's energy. And I know we've talked about that extensively, but generally what I feel comfortable doing today, and there's really one amendment. The amendment gets to your initial bill, simply opens up the market. I believe there should be some level of a measured approach where we'd have a cap placed on it. I'm comfortable with the waiting list because, it is a 3-year waiting list. It's not a 25-year, it's not a 10-year. It has 3 years. Where's the recommendation? Go by quickly. But if you claim that this could spur some level of economic activity, investment, lure people into our state that can potentially compete for the ability to procure their own energy, I also favor that condition. I'll work with you in the cap. I really hate to get into something arbitrary, but I feel comfortable doing this because we're early in the process.
Okay.
You can continue to, we can continue, we had our staff look very thoroughly into this, and we see that there's strong arguments on both sides. You have as much support as you have opposition, and that often makes a bill concerning to legislators and generally, and I think people in this committee feel the same concern. So I'll work with you on the cap and increasing the cap to 8,000 from 60. What we had expressed was increasing the amount of load to 61,131, and we would simply increase that to 8,000. And the amendments and work with you in through this process, you know, to see where you go and continue to, you know, hear from the proponents and the opponents about what this would do. But, you know, I'll work with you early in this process and move the bill forward, and if you accept those, we'll.
Sure, happy
we'll
to.
recommend
And all I
approval.
want to say in the close, just to address, as Senator Pavley indicated, this advances the climate goals because consistent with the RPS standard, it says 51%, which is, right now it's a 33 1/3, presuming that the pro tems measure becomes law, that'll be 50%. So this, even by 1 point, exceeds it, consistent with the application of the Renewable Portfolio Standard law. So that clearly advances it in terms of climate change idea. And all I want to share with everybody is this. This is a chicken and an egg problem. You've got significant shifting in a market, and it really is the Pony Express of people being upset, or the telegraph company about the change, and I'm going to lose my jobs, and we're comfortable with the old structure, or Tern being happy because they've got a whole integrated relationship through a PUC of 1,000 employees and stuff, and the world's shifting. We're either going to lead it, or we're going to be led by it. What does that look like? And always, always, as Senator Leyva indicates, protecting jobs. And I think that, quite frankly, this is a way to capture that market, to really get back into the lead in terms of where we need to be. California has a brand asset that we want to use, and there will be, I think, a lot of spin-off from this and a lot of opportunity for California. The bottom line, and from my point of view, from an energy policy, and I think this is one leg, it's a question of where you lead from, because there is risk in terms of cost. We got to fix it. There is risk all over the place. But where do you start in the process? And you've got certain other senators doing other things, and this is one of the many steps that are necessary in the larger dynamic. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you. Do we have a motion from a member of the committee? We have a motion by Senator Fuller. Clerk, please call the roll.
Do pass as amended to appropriations. Wesso?
Aye.
Wesso, aye. Fuller?
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Cannella? Hertzberg?
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Hill? Lara? Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Morel? Aye. Morel, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Wolk? He has enough votes, 7-0, but leave it open.
Very well. Good
Thank you
job.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for the attention, Mr. Chairman.
Who's next? Senator Hertzberg, simply while you're present, I'm going to ask for the movement of your next bill, 697. It's the Charter Party Carriers Bill. That's consent. If we can just ask for a motion on the consent calendar. Members, if we can have a motion on the consent calendar for SB 697. We have a motion by Senator Leyva. Clerk, please call the roll.
SB 697 is consent. Do pass to appropriations. Wesso?
Aye.
Wesso, aye. Fuller?
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Cannella? Cannella, aye. Hertzberg? Hertzberg, aye. Hill? Lara? Leyva? Leyva, aye. McGuire? McGuire, aye. Morel? Morel, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Wolk? We could leave it open for
Okay, we have 8 yeas, ayes, and
no.
1 no.
No no's.
And we'll keep the roll open for the absent
consent.
members.